Okay. All right. Welcome, all of you, and good morning. And I'm so glad that we have a good turnout here for this very exciting discussion. So as you all know, quite some time ago, as part of our Vision Fund 300 campaign, we made the decision to engage the services of an architect to give us some suggestions and some plans for potential things that could be done to make the front part of our sanctuary more easily usable and to accommodate all the various needs that we have, including the bell choir, the vocal choir, soloists, all of the things that we try to get into our services. And so in just a moment, our architect, George Fellner, is going to come up, and he has a slideshow. He's got quite a few different designs for us to look at. After he finishes, we will have a bit of discussion, a bit of question and answer. We won't be making any decisions here today, and we will have lots of opportunities for people to share their thoughts and their perspectives. So you can think and think about the designs today, and then over the next several weeks, we will have more discussion around that. Tomorrow morning, you will also be getting this package of diagrams and plans via email, so that you can review them in more detail. So if you missed something today, or you feel like you didn't quite understand something and you don't get a chance to get it clarified, you'll have an opportunity to do that over the next few weeks as well. Housekeeping point, the trash can is in the back of the sanctuary, so as you finish your drink or your plate, you can throw it there.
Demonstrate.
And Ruth is going to demonstrate where the trash can is. Excellent. So I will now invite George Fellner to share with us. Thank you, George.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I would like to begin today's program by basically giving you a brief presentation of goals, rationale, and objectives as had been developed by the Sanctuary Committee. We worked very closely together. There was a lot of great dialogue throughout the entire process, and I thank the committee for that. Makes my job easier, and I basically look at that information as the parameters and the basic context for analysis, and especially for the creative process. So with that, I'll get right into it and present the overall goal of creating up-to-date, well-functioning space with flexibility, being consistent with the church's vision for both worship and programming activity experience being dynamic and welcoming. A responsive space that responds to both the aesthetics as well as the historic heritage of the building. Looking at rationale, these are all the various concepts that were kicked around in terms of why we're doing this. Looking at inefficiencies and maybe crowdedness, the need for rejuvenation, accommodating dynamic types of worship and programming, being flexible, assessment of the monitor for optimal placement and other factors, integrating other projects that will be coming later, such as carpeting, lighting, painting, things like that. And then looking at alternative strategies so we could look at what options are possible. Rather than just looking at one scheme and nothing else, it's important to check out the possibilities to see what is possible. As far as objectives, accommodating the optimal spatial placement and functions for services and programs, integrating the various elements, including the lectern, the communion table, all the pieces that you see in front of you. Again, being responsive to the historic heritage and the modern technology that we have today, optimizing for visual access and accessibility. I have a corner of my eye, so I saw movement.
A projectile.
Projectile, yes. So I have a series of existing photos, not that you know what it looks like, you're sitting right there, but we took a lot of photos because it helps us. When I'm doing my work, I've got two monitors, like most people do nowadays, and I have one monitor with photos and the other monitor with what I'm working on, and it helps me think. More objectives, flexibility for multiple program types. That was very much a concern that we talked about, and that intrigued me because, as I started looking for, examples in terms of speakers, presentations, liturgical dance. I really like the image in the middle. It kind of expresses that. Maybe a drama production, musical events, which I know you've had in the past. So how can this whole front area serve as these alternate kinds of functions as well? As many of you know, I was here on 2 Sunday services. One was on December 1st, which is it's a standard type of service. And I was here to get information, to observe, kind of disappear. Some people have wondered what I was doing there. I was taking notes, But these are some of the observations that I made. The style of the architecture, being an atmospheric space that promotes prayer and contemplation. There's a timeless sense of history. We know this, has been here a long time. The visual focal point that you have with the pulpit, the Palladian panels, the prayer phrases above, and of course the visual choreography of all the forms and details as you look at all the beautiful details around you. The raised pulpit as a dominant element, it certainly is dominating the space. There is, as you can see in the photo from sort of an aerial view, a bit of a crowded sensation as you see. The side pews, which are not being used, I was very much aware of that. The monitor as an integral presence, and of course the sightline issues. And I was being very critical as I was watching the children's service then and also today. It's really hard to see what's going on. You can kind of look at over the heads, but some of the ideas we kicked around is maybe having cameras and so that people can see on the monitor what's going on, so that there's a better sense of that. And I have a few other ideas on that as well. More observations on that day. The choir, it is kind of a crowded, tight positioned with the piano. The communion table seems to work well. The baptismal font sits in the corner. You don't know it's there. It's brought out when there's a baptism. And I kind of felt that baptismal font looks kind of lonely over there. What's up with that? It's just lonely and it's sitting there by itself, and maybe it needs a little more of a prominent positioning. And then I came back a week later for the lessons and carols, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I was very much aware of the balanced and ethereal flavor, especially that day with the light, the natural light that was coming in. Listening to the bell choir at the beginning was very much a contemplative experience. Of course, the choir being a prominent part of the service, but of course, again, crowded. And it seemed like there were more members there that day, a couple more. The sequencing of lessons and carols and the frequent movement of the choir. There was a lot of back and forth between the pews and up here. Of course, the communion table having a prominent location. So, giving credit to Ed for the photos, but I looked at a couple of other church sanctuaries, and you can see them all listed above. Some of the takeaways. A number of them seem to have a rather spacious layout, not so much crowded. The potential for open stage, progressive rise in the levels. You can see the altar pulpit in some of these being at the rear wall, and also the seating and choir along the rear wall in some of these. There's a few more examples of that, as you can see, what I just mentioned as observations. And this is all just information that kind of helps fuel the mind and as part of the analysis. So I'm going to skip through the pulpit history because you saw an excellent video on that. So the important thing basically is accommodating changes, redesign, and modifications represented by changing needs and attitudes. And of course, this is what we have today. Since 1938, this is the pulpit. So I'm going to now, here's the existing plan, just so many of you have never seen what the layout looks like. But here's the entire floor, and then a close-up view so you can see better, just to get your bearings. Here's the left side pews, the three-level platform, the pulpit, and the bell choir. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip through these and go right to the scheme, because I'm going to talk about the overall concepts that were common as far as common denominators for all the schemes. And it's easier, rather than having you read words, look at the floor plan, and I'm going to sort of talk you through it, and then you can see basically what we're proposing. First of all, a reorganization of the elements to optimize the space and function. That's really what this is all about. We wanted to explore possibilities for what to do with the pulpit. Pulpit takes up a lot of real estate as it is right now, so we said, what opportunities are there to work with that? In this, well, you'll see when I discuss scheme A1, I'll get into that in more detail. You may or may not notice that I removed the two front pews, so you won't be sitting there anymore, because this whole front row I propose we take out. And that does a couple of things. It gives us a little more breathing room for this front area, especially thinking of potential stage. I mean, maybe for an actual service it's okay, but if there's some kind of an alternate type of event happening, such as music or drama, having that extra room could be very nice. And I think just from seeing the population within the church and the couple of times I've been here, I don't think we would lose too much as far as the seating. We have plenty of, the side seating is rarely used. And even in the middle sections, there seems to be enough room. Also, and part of that discussion is the removal of that whole left side, because I've never seen that being used. So it takes up a lot of space. So how do you take those kinds of elements which take up space and aren't doing anything and make it work? That's what architects do. We try to make it, get it optimized. A slight shifting, you may not notice, but the bell choir, shifting it slightly a few inches that way just gives a little more room when you enter the main door, because this is the door that we all enter as we come in. We wanted to make that path as generous as possible. And then the ramp. So there's a proposed new ramp here on the left side, which is, again, common to all the schemes. This is a way to do a number of things. One is to allow for access for people that need a ramp to get up to the first level. It doesn't get you to the second and third level, because then you would need a lot of ramps to do that. But it's a good attempt to make it happen so that you can get to the first level. Secondly, it also allows.
What do you consider in the second level?
I'm sorry?
What do you consider in the first, second, and third level?
I'm talking about
This is the first level?
platforms.
Floor.
So the floor, I'm sorry, the floor is the base floor level. These lines represent steps. So this 6-inch step up to a first level, another 6 inches to a second level, and a third level. So those are 3 levels as part of a platform system. So, and I was going to get to that, because the ramp takes you up to that, and thinking about watching how the choir would go up during the various events, I thought that, well, there's now a lot of options, because rather than just coming in at one point, which is what I see happening now, you can either go up anywhere along this front step, or you can have a more formal processional kind of a flow where people go walk up the ramp and then populate the 3 levels.
What's a standard step?
I'm sorry?
What is a standard step? 6, 8, 10 inches?
It could be anywhere from 6 to 7. Well, 7 inches the maximum. Yeah, I think we want to take questions at the end. Is that what you want to say?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try to.
For the meeting record, they won't be heard on Zoom unless somebody speaks into a mic.
We'll do Q&A at the end.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're on Zoom, you need to hear it from.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go on to some more overall concepts that are common to all 5 schemes. The new graduated platforms, which is what I was just starting to talk about, they all have this multi-level platform system. It's kind of like what you have now, but those are basically just sort of portable platforms that kind of crank up. I'm proposing something a little more permanent, built out of wood construction and covered with carpet. And also providing a spacious layout for the choir, rather than having this very tight situation that you all have, spreading it out, as you can see. And we can get, I'm going to talk about in each scheme how many people can actually fit on those steps. Optimizing the location of the lectern and communion table, so you can see various ways of doing that. There's a lot of flexibility. Replacing our, see the non-used door that's covered with that, the hidden curtain thing, kind of like who's behind the curtain. Replacing that with panels that match what's happening with the rest, so it looks integral and not sort of a closed-off door that's got a curtain in front of it. So it's an integrated panel system. And then the monitors. I looked quite a bit at what to do about that, because when you think about those three-level platform systems coming across, you can just visualize that especially if you're over 5 feet, it's going to cover the front of that monitor, at least the bottom portion of it. So I had two choices: either lift it up higher, and then we start to invade the three-panel system. I really didn't want to do that. I think it's pretty important to retain the integrity of the architectural interior. So the alternate was to divide that into two panels, one on each side, flanking, and above the arch of those door systems. And I'll show you that in the renderings. So now I'm going to talk about the specifics for this particular scheme. You notice that the pulpit is no longer in the middle. What I did is I proposed that we take the existing pulpit and we cut off the wing portion. So we basically keep the center octagonal shape that you see would be retained and would be reattached to the back wall as an ornamental element, basically honoring its historical heritage and its meanings. This also would provide the space for the choir, as you see. Most of the altar area in this scheme is at the base floor level. So you see the first step doesn't actually start till here. So this whole area would be one level as it is now. And of course the pulpit and the communion table that you see here are at that base level. The rear ceremonial chairs that you see would not be included here in this scheme. And the choir accommodates 23, so 23 very comfortably. You could squeeze a little more, but 23 would be a reasonable estimate of how many people can actually be part of the choir. I'm now going to go to a few renderings to kind of illustrate these concepts. I'll kind of talk you through. That's the view you would get from somewhere in the halfway down, looking down from the upper area. You can see the 3 levels of the platform system. You see a few choir members that are in the process of doing their song, and there's the ramp. And you see the baptismal font. I placed that here, so it's a little more prominent. It's not in your face. It's not in the middle where it's not being used, and it would be kind of strange. But when it is being used, it's very easy to just, I don't know how heavy it is. I didn't try to move it, but it could be shifted. Maybe we put wheels on it, but it could be brought out more central. But it does have a more respectable, call it a respectable position. And then you can see the monitors, as you see in these two on either side right above the door. Because the monitor is removed from the front panel system, as you see my pointer moving around? That basically exposes the beautiful panels, which is right now hidden behind a monitor. More views of that looking closer. And then look from the angle, you can see in 3 dimensions how it would work. And you can see what I was talking about with the pulpit. See how the 3 front face, the front and the 2 angled pieces would remain and be attached. Actually, it's including this too. So this whole front portion, including this, the 2 wings, would be part of that. This is where you would cut it. So that whole front portion with the two front wing sections would be what is attached to the back wall. You can see I took out the choir so you can get a better view of what's behind them. And there's a close-up. When I had presented these schemes to the Sanctuary Committee, there was a lot of very healthy discussion, and one of the comments that came out of that was looking at an alternate for that pulpit situation. So I'm going to take you there on scheme A2. So A1 and A2 are very similar. The only essential difference between the two is that instead of taking the pulpit and cutting it and attaching it to the back wall like you saw in A1, is that we would repurpose this and take the front portion, which would be the front panel and the two angles, cut it there and put it on wheels. And it would be an independent element that you see in this floor plan right here. You see the angled positioning of it? This rectangle is a platform that it sits on. And you're going to see it in the renderings. You can see it, again, these are the views looking at it, but you can see the difference with the repurposed pulpit. And here you get to see the platform. That's a step up, so it's a 6-inch step up, so it is making an attempt to bring up the pastor or a reader to come up a little higher to improve on the sight lines. So essentially that's the big difference. The other piece of modification that came out of the meetings with the committee was the potential of doing something to the front of the choir table. See, right now it's basically looking like you have these draped pieces, but if we have these paneled sections, as you see here, that match the wood panels, it would make the bell choir a more integrated set of elements within the church, so it doesn't look like it was just added in there. It looks more intentional. So another angled view looking at the pulpit, repurposed with the platform step-up. So now we'll go to scheme B1. Here's the floor plan, and rather than go through all of the other parts that are very similar, I'm going to focus on what's different. Scheme B1, I took the first level of that step-up. Instead of being here, right in front of the first row of choir singers, I moved it out to here. So now, what this is, the thought process was make a stage. So it's a 6-inch step up, so that now you have this pretty generous space here. You can always roll the piano back a little bit. It's got wheels, and move it further to the left. Remove and relocate the communion table and this pulpit, and have a nice stage area for alternate productions. The renderings reinforce that and express how that works. You can especially see it in this view looking down. You can see the expanse of that first stage area, the first step for the stage area, you see here. Again, just like if we had an A1, that's why A1 and B1 are similar in that the the pulpit element is attached to the back wall. So this is the same thing that we did with A1. Remember how I did that? So now I'm sure you can guess what scheme B2 will look like. You know, very, very. So we're going to get to that in a minute. Here again is a close-up. And we'll go to B2, and lo and behold, it is repurposed here, and now it's already up 6 inches, so we gained some height. Someone had mentioned that maybe it could be another platform level there as well, for a step up, it's possible. But here's a close-up view of it. There's the repurposed pulpit with the 3 levels with the larger stage area. And so here again are the rendered views of that. This is probably one of the better views that helps very clearly illustrate how that works. It's really wonderful to have the ability to have the technology to show these schemes. It's a lot quicker than drawing them by hand, especially when you have different views that you can generate through the computer model. Oh, and by the way, you notice the paneling on the door. So it's meant to be integrated and look like something that's more integral. Another view of the repurposed pulpit on the platform. So now we'll go to the last scheme, scheme C1. There's no scheme 2, CC2. So scheme 1, C1. The big difference with this is that we still have the 3-level platform, as you see, but instead of taking the pulpit apart, I went and kept the pulpit where it is. I call this the least magnitude of change. So we would retain what's there. However, you notice that the first step of the platform system is a few feet in front of that. So essentially that means that we'd be up 6 inches, so that first step would be enveloped by that first platform. So you have one less riser going up to the pulpit. It also, we can have a single chair behind it, and then a choir would be, as you see in my pointer, there's the first level which goes all the way across. I still wanted to have that sense of central choir rather than all on one side, and you notice in all the schemes that's what I was doing when I repurposed the pulpit. In this one, since we're keeping the pulpit where it is, I could only use the front row that wraps across like this, and then the second and the third row above. So the base floor is at the same level as it is now. So I decided in this one, we're a little more limited in space, so I didn't want to bring it out, because then the amount would actually be smaller. So the number of people, 18 members, so the choir can hold 18, not as many as the others, but still 18. You could, you can see I have 2 here. You can actually put another few more in front if you wanted to do that. In scheme A1, B1, and C1, I did not add the front panel to the front. Keep in mind that there could be a mix and match. So let's say if you like scheme A1 or B1, and you also like the wall panel facing on the choir, that could be adjusted and brought in there. So there is some ability to have some mixing of certain elements. So that next goes to the 3D renderings to give you a sense of what that looks like. Here's the choir in front of it. I didn't show the extra members that are on the base floor, but you get the idea. So most of the choir members are on the left side, but there could be a row across the front. Looking above, looking down at it, you see that first step is enveloped by this wider platform, and there is the pulpit as it is now with the rails and so on. We still, of course, have the ramp, the repositioned baptismal font, so that all still works. And a few more views of it. You notice I still kept the monitors up high with the 2 on either side, because you might say, well, why don't we keep it where it is since we're not blocking? But I thought, when there's something happening there, it could still block. And so I didn't want to have any compromise or halfway solutions. I wanted it to work in every scenario. Here's another view looking at the pulpit. And with that, I basically went through all the schemes. I know that they're hanging up downstairs, so you can look at them, and then they'll be coming out. Very quickly, I can just run through. These are just some very preliminary estimates of what it would cost to do this work. Scheme A1 is just over $73,000. Scheme A2 is a little over $88,000. Scheme B1 is $90,322. Scheme B2 is the most expensive at $106,192. Scheme 1, being the least magnitude, is just under $48,000. This doesn't include other things like painting and carpeting, because that's more integral to the whole sanctuary. So with that, I'm going to ask Ruth to come up.
Very, very quickly, what's next is today. We really not only want your comments, we need your comments. And speaking today at the meeting is a very good way to do that. Bill Hoffman is on the job here to take notes. The comments need to be said into the microphone in order for people on Zoom to be able to hear them. Now, George mentioned the bulletin board. There is a bulletin board display set up in Chapin Hall, and I think there are comment cards. David, am I right? Comment cards where you can put comments there. However, as David also mentioned, we're sending out tomorrow morning this whole slideshow. So you can zero in on the different slides and the different renderings and so on. And then the other way to send in comments is to just email them to Heather. And the next step is that the Sanctuary Committee will review all of the comments and will make recommendations to Council, at which point Council it will be kind of in Council's hands, and Council will make their recommendations or proposal or their decisions, and there will be another meeting. And obviously, given the cost, this would need a congregational meeting to approve moving forward on anything. So that's the process of what's next.
So that brings us to the end of the presentation, and I will have you.
Thank you. Yep. So before we take a question, so let me just say a couple of things. So first of all, it's been a joy to work with George Fellner. He's been a fantastic choice for this project because he really has understood what our congregation is about. And as he mentioned, he attended several services here, so he really was able to see how we use this space and how we want to use this space. So as has already been mentioned a couple of times, there are going to be lots of opportunities for you to comment or share your thoughts and concerns. I want to emphasize this because I think we've all sat in congregational meetings or in business meetings at our jobs before. There's often a handful of people who feel really comfortable speaking in public and, have strong opinions and whatever. And I know I've been in the circumstance of sitting quietly and thinking, well, everything that people are saying is the opposite of what I think, and I'm afraid my voice isn't going to be heard. So I want to reassure you that if you are not comfortable speaking today or you just don't get a chance to speak today, we are still going to take your comments and your feedback as seriously as anybody who does feel comfortable speaking today. So, we've already discussed the ways that we'll be collecting that feedback, and we are going to take it all seriously, whether it's in print or whether it's verbal. Bill Hoffman's going to be taking notes, and Ruth already went over that. Also, just in order to make this discussion flow sort of smoothly, I would encourage you to think about what you want to say and then direct your comments to George and to the committee rather than responding to someone else's comment, because we could easily kind of get bogged down in a debate if somebody says, well, I don't agree with that, let me give you my opinion, and then we're going back and forth. And we can have those conversations later at another time, but for today, try to share your comments or your questions and not get into debating with one another. As Ruth mentioned, when you are sharing your comments later, you can email them to me as one possibility. And you can also speak with anybody who's on the Sanctuary Committee, several of whom are here today. So if you are on the committee that has been working with George, could you just stand for a second? Of course, Ruth, Sandy, Ed, Marcia Hoffman, Dave Hall, Dave Sageman, Bill Hoffman, of course me, and of course Pastor David. So, there are lots of people here with whom you can share comments later or on another date. So with that said, I know several people already have things they would like to say.
I had a couple questions. One is, I know you said about taking the first two pews out. Was there any possibility of just removing one pew? That's the first question. And then the second one was in the the C1, it looked like part of the choir would be on those columns, yeah. And is that the case?
Okay, so the first question was, can we have one instead of two pews being removed? Yes, we can, however, I would not. I would say that the balance, this is a very symmetrical interior. If you look around, everything is in symmetry.
I think maybe George, did you mean that you're removing these first two pews, or did you mean left and right, 1, 2?
I meant these front two pews versus removing one.
So
Just
I'm
one.
talking about 1 and 1. So when I said two pews,
Yeah.
I apologize. Two pews meaning 1
One
and
and
2. So it's symmetrical and it's equal distant for the whole front.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for clarifying.
That's a good question. It would be very off balance to have it like
Yeah,
that.
there we go.
I would never do that.
I have a question and a comment. Quick question, is anybody ever going to preach from that?
David, are you going to preach from up there?
In C1, that's a good possibility.
Oh, okay. And my other comment is, I like using part of that as a lectern.
I think I made my decision already, but I'm still not sure. But definitely the second one, which is A2.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there was a second question, this lady.
Yes.
What was the second question?
Was about in C1 whether the choir would be
Right.
beyond the column.
Yes, so my recollection is that with A1, B1, A1, B1, B2, C, A1, A2, B, both A's and B's. I'm right at the edge of it, because I wanted to stay away from it. In C1, there's, I think, 1 over that's underneath it. We still have enough height to be to code, but I wanted to at least get 18 in the choir in C1. So that is one level of compromise. You know, there's a little overlap going behind that or underneath that overhang.
Okay, so a couple quick, first a comment. So one of the things that I always look at is we have a rat's nest of wires running all over the place, which by going to a riser system, we could rerun the wires and make it so it's not a tripping hazard. We have a little bit more thought and planning on it, so definitely a good, I like the 3-level system.
Yeah.
That will accommodate that pretty well. And incorporating the historic elements into it, it's definitely appreciated. I do like actually the splitting of the monitors. So though there's a central focus right now, especially when you're sitting on the wing side, like looking above one of the arches to one door is, if you sit in the center section, you probably don't notice it as much. But if you're sitting on the sides, it definitely is much more noticeable.
Can I say something about that?
Like, it's an easier view to see the center of the sides, on the sides.
On the sides. Yeah, and I don't know if you will all have a chance to look more closely at the drawings that George has, but one of the things is that when he was speaking about having the monitor in 2 places, that also involves putting up some molding around it so that they look like a permanent and intentional feature of the church. And I know that part of what has happened as this has evolved is, 2020 hit, we needed to pivot to virtual quickly. We sort of got a screen quickly and it was temporary, and then this was put up, and that process kind of unfolded quite quickly. But this gives us the opportunity to be thoughtful about it and have them have a permanent position.
Let me just show you what that looks like. You can see it here. You see how there's a trim that wraps around it, so it's not just attached, but there would be an actual perimeter panel system that wraps around, so it does look intentional.
2 questions. First one is for George. Is there any feasible way to get rid of the columns of the one immediately to your left and its corresponding one over on this side?
Eliminating these columns? No.
Okay, all right. It's
We
nice
could,
to
but
have
it'll
clear
fall down.
answers about some of this stuff.
I know that's a flippant answer, but yes, you can do just about anything within reason structurally, but you'd have to remove this, you'd have to have a new column that, and you would have it coming down. It would completely destroy the integrity of the architecture. I would be very much against that. So.
Okay, thank you. Second question is really for the committee going forward. I think we have to decide whether the pulpit is something that's going to be used or whether it's just part of our heritage and we're going to nail it to the wall and never use it again. And obviously, that's for the committee going forward, I think.
And, you know, not just the sanctuary committee, but also the worship committee, who's involved in worship planning, you know, as well as the music committee as well. So lots of people are kind of involved in that decision.
So I have a comment. So the scheme where you take the pulpit piece and then put it against the wall, my only thought is if we're going to look at this and we want it to be versatile and going forward, like we think about how it's going to be used up there, I feel like if that became a permanent fixture up there, we're going to regret that. Now we're going to be like, well, now we can't use that piece up there. That's my only thought.
I just feel that to do anything and not free up the space that isn't being used, the whole pulpit area, would be silly. I like the idea of having the pulpit be used on wheels, be moved around, so we still have that piece of it. But to try to free up space and not move that seems a waste.
Silly, yeah.
So putting it against the wall would allow us someplace to put candles in a flower pot, a vase. So I don't think that that really accomplishes a lot. So.
Thank you so much, first of all, for all these great renderings, because it gives me a much better idea of what's going on, or potentially going on, I should say. But, and I'm loving the feedback from everyone. I also appreciate, as the person who directs the choir, just the thought about how we fit the bodies up there. And we have a good problem now of having more people singing, and we want to make sure they're comfortable. My question, I guess, about that is it possible with these platforms, not you know, the whole year, but like for a service like Lessons and Carols, or maybe even Easter, where the choir is really involved, could we potentially have chairs on those platforms that could be removed for the rest of the year? Would they be big enough to accommodate a chair so the choir could sit and then stand up and sing and then sit as need be, just for comfort level of our population singing in choir?
So I'm trying to understand what the question is, because I couldn't.
Would the platforms be large enough to accommodate chairs?
Oh, I see. So if we want to add a chair on there, it could. It would be wide enough to have a chair, but not wide enough to have a chair and a person standing in front of it. So let's say it would compromise one or two positions. So let's say we keep the chair, we would just have one less choir member on the upper platform, but that could be made up at the lower level somehow, maybe along the floor, base floor.
Okay. All right, thanks. And I loved that when the bell choir, the one rendering where the bell choir had pieces of the paneling to make it seem more cohesive. I think we would appreciate that.
I think Dave Hall.
Can you hear me okay?
If you talk loud.
Yeah. What'd you say, Dave? We have several questions from consumers related to the bell choir. Somebody asked if they could see how the bell choir tables are different or appear on each of the renderings. I think they're the same.
Is that true? They're the same, I think, right?
Let me go to one of those renderings.
Sure. So Dave was reading a question from someone on Zoom who was asking, these 5 different arrangements that we have, are the bell tables different amongst those 5, or is it the same? And I believe they're the same in each of the 5 renderings. They may look a little different in the pictures. I think you mentioned that in C1, there's not a sort of little wall here.
Yeah, correct. I only showed, just to show variation in options, A2 and B2 are the ones that show the front panels. It could be done on C1 as well, or it could be done on A1 and B1. I just wanted to have a choice, basically.
But the actual tables themselves are the same, and of course are movable. So, I mean, we can and do move those around. What else, Dave?
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me a little better now. question was asked, what provisions would there be for an expanding size of bell choir? Are we fitting just what's there now? What if the choir gets bigger?
So expanding the bell choir, so here's a floor plan of the bell choir. That never came up during any of our meetings with the committee as far as more members for the choir. So that I wasn't aware that that would be a possibility.
So I guess that's a question that we need to.
Yeah, so if let's say you wanted, you probably could get maybe 1 or 2 extra people. You can take that, this particular angled one and bring it straight. It's a little clumsy with the column there, but we could put it parallel. So you might get maybe 1 extra. I wouldn't go any closer this way because I don't think you want to start infringing onto the pews. You want to have some breathing space.
Yeah. Question was asked about what thoughts are there about improving the lighting for the bell choir area. And I think the answer is when we settle on an overall design, then we'll think about the best way to light that. So that's kind of beyond the scope of the designs right now.
And hold on just a second, Dave, because that's actually, there are several projects that have been designated as part of the use for our Vision Fund money that relate to the sanctuary, but do not necessarily relate to this immediate project. And lighting is one of them. We also need to refresh the paint on the inside of the sanctuary, which we plan to do, but we don't want to do that until we know what's going to happen up here. Similarly, our carpet needs to be needs to be replaced. And again, we can't move forward on that until, we make a decision on this. So they're all integrated together. So yes, lighting, we know that lighting is a problem, and we definitely want to address it.
And just one comment that I'll make from my own perspective. I know in the last emergency where we need to be. Can you not hear me? I don't know why this mic is.
We can when you stand up for some reason.
All right. Is that any better? If we leave the pulpit in C, we leave the pulpit there, and the choir is pretty much pushed off to the left. But you've created space for a lot of other choir members by stretching them out all the way across. That seems like a really silly way for a choir to be positioned for singing. I would hate to be the last person on the right-hand side with the rest of the choir all on the left-hand side. So, yeah, you can fit 18 people, which actually is what we have now many weeks already. But you cannot fit 18 people in a sensible configuration. So we need to come up with some better approach for accommodating choir and choir growth than just spreading out 1 row or even 2 rows way out to the side while the bulk of the choir is on the left. And in fact, the riser area would extend partly under the balcony, which again is suboptimal for acoustics. I wouldn't want to be a person standing on the upper riser underneath the balcony overhang there. The sound's going to be cut off a little bit. So those are all considerations that I would.
Right. So just to comment on what you said, that you're looking at it, and there's the 2, and part of this person that's underneath the balcony. You can see that the position of the existing pulpit really doesn't allow you to do anything different. So that is very much a compromise situation in C1. You don't have that in the other 4 schemes.
And I'm not sure there is a good solution to that, which causes me to wonder whether or not we're just trying to force too many things. What's the point of doing this if we're not going to provide for better spacing for things up there? And I know it's an option we specifically asked you to provide, so I'm not poo-pooing showing that. I'm just calling attention to some of the limitations of that approach. I had one more question coming from Zoomers, and I think you addressed this, but they were asking, is the removal of the front pews go all the way across, or is it just the center 2 pews?
All the way, right?
All the way across.
All the way across, so it's from window to window. That
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy?
Thank you. I'm a new face, so I'm going to be bold, but sometimes an outsider's opinion is good. I won't stay an outsider long, but so far I still am. You're in now. I'm in it now, huh? I was thrilled to see the many imaginative ways that this could be changed to allow the inspired and creative ways that worship has changed since this building was built. My initial reaction to the first view was, oh, please, don't reduce the pulpit to a lectern, because a huge part of the history of the Reformed tradition, and particularly in Congregational churches, is to hear the word reflected upon from an educated and erudite clergy. So I was also thrilled to see a movable pulpit. Thank you.
Yeah, which I don't know, hopefully you all understood when George described it, but the pulpit, when he showed the design that has the pulpit on a little riser thingy, it's movable, which, yeah, I think is fabulous.
Hi. I have a lot of comments, and I think a lot of it is, I kind of wish we heard specifically from music and ministry, i.e. Julie and Dave, to see what their thoughts are and what they see going forward. Because I think that's really important, and that's important for all of us to kind of have that kind of piece.
So I just want to say that the chairs.
I know that, but it's like, it would have been nice to like get your view. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, from David, yeah, and
In
then
the future.
the chairs of music and the worship team and David were all on the committee, so, but yeah.
And I do like the idea of the pulpit on the wheels so that it can be moved as needed. Also, just having up that 6 inches more, it's more visual for people in the back.
Agreed.
I liked the comment about the dual monitors because I looked at it, I'm thinking, the wings aren't gonna be able to see it, but then him saying that the right wing can see the left monitor, the right,
Yeah.
so that makes a lot of sense.
I've been in a lot of, I just want to comment, I've been in a lot of conferences where I've presented programs in architectural scenarios where I would have a large group of up to, one time 600 people in my audience, and there were 2 monitors on each side, and that basically gave the opportunity for people on both sides to kind of pick which one they want to look at. This is much smaller, obviously, but it lends itself for that kind of choice of where to look.
One other comment was on the seating for the choir. What if they had folding seat chairs, like that automatically came up like a movie theater? Just a thought.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. This is exciting. As somebody who studies, and researches the history, man, we're in it. This is it, man. It couldn't get any better than this. Why are we doing this? It's a 300-year celebration, right? It's 300 years. And so by 2027, this has got to be done, right? And this outside of the building, all the grounds, man, we're going to be shining, right? It's going to be beautiful. So I'm very excited to be in this situation. I like, if I could just say out loud, B2. I know it's the most expensive, but that's what I like. I think I've seen maybe 2 people preach from the pulpit in the 3 or 4 years that I've been here. The pulpit's not used. It's dead space, and we need to repurpose and reclaim that space, and we could see the temporariness of other things. My concern is that space under the balcony where the ramp is, it looks to me like there's no purpose to it. And I think that we need to establish some reason for that ramp and all of that space. I mean, that's all flat, and what do we do with that? I like the raised pulpit. If anybody has sat in the back and looked at poor David, when he's preaching, or anybody else, you could just barely see his head. So in B, he's six inches up from, because we have a stage, and then another possibly 6 inches up from that, because we'll have that movable lectern that I'm very happy to see that people like. And so he would be a foot higher. You're going to it now. Yeah, one of my concerns about that design right there is tripping, that people are going to fall off of that thing. And I've seen like railings, and I'm wondering if not a lot of railings, but perhaps right on the corner, can we put a nice railing, like maybe 6 feet on that corner? It would look beautiful. It could look, take some of the architecture that we have. Or something, anything that could be put there that people can see. I really love what Julie said, that the chairs, the width of those risers. Do you know the width of those, George?
Like 3.5 feet, I believe.
But you said, just to clarify, you said you could put a chair on there.
I could, but you can see the depth. If you put a chair here, you would not have enough room for a chair and a person in front of it.
Right.
So let's say there's a chair here, then as choir members populate, they would kind of walk around to get to the other side of the chair, step up to it. So there would be a chair that takes up that spot. You can always remove that chair when it's not being used, you know, maybe put the chair there for certain functions.
But can you, I guess my question then, if it's maybe a desire from music, can you make those that wider?
You can, but then what you're giving up is some of the stage area. So it becomes a little bit, you know, wider, and you have to justify that. You know, how important is the chair versus having a row? It's like right now you have, you know, you can't put a chair there and a person, you know, without falling off in front. And so I would like to see that we could keep this front stage area as generous as possible and not take away by adding more to the platform.
Mm-hmm.
The other comment I want to make is a couple of things. One is, you know, your idea of maybe some sort of a partial rail, like at the curve. You know, I think that could work. We could, you know, design something that would be, I wouldn't go all the way across. You want to have maybe an opening, maybe have one that makes the turn, have this open, and then maybe have another one that's partially here. We could selectively pick up a few of these so that from a psychological standpoint, people know that there's a barrier, and then there's less of a chance of people tripping. That was on my mind as well. I was wrestling with that. The other, you know, the comment about this is really a ramp, and then this is circulation to get, you know, once you get up to the landing, you want to have enough room for a turning radius, for a wheelchair. Obviously, we have code issues to deal with, so I made that work for the 5 foot. So sometimes you need circulation space to make things work if you decide you want a ramp, which I think is a good idea because it at least gets a person who is limited by having to use a wheelchair to get up that ramp. It shows sensitivity for that. The third item I want to say is that if there's maybe a drama production or a liturgical dance, this could be a sort of a backstage area where there's, you know, the actors that are not in the front right now may come up there later, you know, so that could be some of that hinterland back area space. And the other thing I want to mention is, this came to me during the children's sermon this morning, the children's lesson. Maybe by having these platforms without the pulpit in the middle, they could sit on those steps with, you know, and then all of a sudden the sight lines are way better, and you kind of have a, you know, I can picture that happening, and that's just something to throw out there as another advantage of having that platform system.
Can I just, I want to clarify one thing, because I'm sorry, Ruth, because I think I understood Julie and the chair's question. So are you picturing for something like lessons and carols, the choir would be standing, and then when it's not their turn to sing because it's somebody's preaching or something, they would sit, and then when it was their turn to sing, they'd stand up, right? Okay, yeah, I got it.
Okay, so if that were the case, and I'm glad you clarified that, that would mean that we would have all these chairs up there. Basically, you'd have 12, whatever number of chairs all the way across. Picture that, having all those chairs up there all the time. I don't think it would be all the time. Okay,
But
so
only for special.
okay, so you'd have to store them somehow and then bring them up.
Yeah, we could do.
Which you could do, but then, and that's fine, all these things are doable, but now what will happen is you need to have chairs for all the choir members, not just the upper row. So now you're doubling up. Picture that width being double, so you're going to wind up around here for just all the platforms. So now you're coming in pretty dramatically into the whole space with those platforms. I think that's your choice, but I think that's a big compromise to give that up.
I just want to add just a little bit of perspective. I kind of ended up as chair of the sanctuary team, probably because I was moderator when I created it. It's been an excellent team, and as George said, we've had some very good meetings. George has been terrific. We definitely chose the right consultant. George has been terrific in proposing the schemes and in really in understanding what we were trying to achieve. And over the time that we've been thinking about this project, we've received comments, ranging from please don't change anything in this beautiful sanctuary to, it's so temporary looking, I feel like I can't really focus on worship. There's a lot of things, and there's, like, I'm seeing a guitar case and a wastebasket and an air conditioning unit and, little table over here and so on. And the thing that always strikes me as most incongruous about the kind of cluttered look is the floor lamp. I mean, when do you see a floor lamp at the front of the... And that illustrates what somebody was asking about, is the lighting changes, which were already in... doing something about lighting was already in vision plan, so that's something that goes along with all of this. But it's wonderful, really wonderful to get all of these comments. They're all very helpful. They all show perspective, and they all show a willingness to consider options.
So I think we have...
Before, can I just make one quick comment? Just thank you for those comments, Ruth. I want to add something. I didn't talk about it, but there were some possibilities of using lighting. I proposed maybe having some lights up that can bring down so we get rid of that lamp.
Yes,
Also, I proposed theater lights for when there's a play. You know how you see them in theaters, so we can have something up in the...
Could you also mention that we looked at a platform over here and that we have storage?
Yes. Oh, the other thing, thank you for reminding me, and I didn't look at my notes at that point, because you notice I looked at my notes and then I scrapped them, which is what I typically do. I mentioned the front panel sections for the bell choir. But what I forgot to mention is, in addition to that, for schemes A2 and B2, is to have storage units below, as well as a few electric outlets. So that was just one other thing that came up from our meetings as a suggestion. And when I did my pricing for estimates, I included that, but I just forgot to mention it. So thank you for reminding me.
So I think we're going to have Elaine Soames and then Marcia Hoffman, and then after that we'll break so people can go to lunch. And of course, we'll carry on this conversation at another time.
Right. I want to thank you for all the choices, because I'm for the pulpit, not that it's being used now, but it could be in the future. But if it is mobile, and David's a little higher so I can see him if I'm not at this pew, it'd be great. And the other thing is, the platform makes me a wreck. It seems limiting, and I think it's going to be a hazard. Why can't the choir steps be used for the children's message at the same time? Because you're not all up there all the time. So, and it's double duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it,
Yeah,
right there,
good thought,
so
yeah.
you get the kids up there, they can see better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had two quick comments. The first was to Ed's point about the ramp and the turnaround space. And I'm just going to speak in historic nature. When we did the addition, everybody said, why do we need an addition? We don't have anybody that needs to use that to come in. And everybody can now see how much it is used. And this is the same kind of point. It opens up the choir and other activities that are up on the levels to someone who might be in a wheelchair at some point, whether it be a child, an adolescent, adult, an older adult. And that would be one of the points. My other thought, to get to Julie's point about chairs and having to go back and forth, is once that ramp is there, I can envision the choir maybe sitting on this left far side, which opens up more of the sanctuary, and using the ramp to go up and down, which would be much less obtrusive than kind of coming up and down over the front every time. And so then if we were not able to sit up there, it would be a lot less mobility and a lot less disruption if we used the ramp and went up and down single file on the far side.
Right, and I just want to comment on that. The use of the ramp for the choir to get up, I did mention that was just as important to me, not just for, accommodating handicap use, but also as an integral element that is used at every service.
Why limit ourselves to taking out one pew? Take out two.
Well, the only problem with that, Suzanne, is that we have recently been having record high attendance. And we don't want to have people have no place to sit. So we're gonna break here. Those of you who have comments that you didn't get to share, or you're gonna look over the plans and give it some thought, please try to share your comments with us by the end of May. So that gives us about 2 weeks to sort of collect general comments. In June, the Sanctuary Committee will meet, the worship and the music people will meet to begin really poring over those comments and thinking about how to move forward. So, take about 2 weeks to give this your consideration. I will say that me and Pastor David and Ruth have all said we like all 5 of these designs, and none of us really have a strong opinion, and I think whatever we go with is going to be absolutely beautiful. So anything, final words from David or Ruth, or no?
The suggestion to hire a taller pastor has been stricken.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, everyone.